Yeah. Okay. Here's Al Gore. And
The sustainability revolution. That is a transition to a more sustainable form of capitalism that optimizes financial, natural, and human capital. Now, there are a number of barriers to achieving a more sustainable form of capitalism. Many of us have long heard the argument that a fiduciary's responsibility is to maximize short-term shareholder value without regard for such external factors, so-called external factors, as the environment and society. And we know it's not true. Common sense tells us it's not true. And it has been proven to be untrue by the work of the Fiduciary Duty and 21st Century Project, a collaboration between the Generation Foundation, the UNPRI, and the UNEP-FI. The Fiduciary Duty and the 21st Century Project seeks to update conceptions of fiduciary duty and, in doing so, create the conditions for a more sustainable global economy. It then goes beyond that and identifies the barriers to upholding the full remit of fiduciary duty in 8 key economies. This work makes the important case that fiduciary duty is not a barrier to investing sustainably. Far to the contrary, it actually shows that there are positive duties to make decisions with consideration of all factors that affect a fiduciary's ability to build value, including environmental and social considerations. 2 years after the publication of the initial report, we are encouraged by the progress that has been made across the globe in the integration of environmental, social, and governance factors. A statement supporting a modern interpretation of fiduciary duty has now been signed by over 100 investor signatories from over 20 countries. But of course, there's still a long way to go. The final and most important phase of this work is now about to begin. We have seen some encouraging examples of progress. For instance, in the US, the 2015 guidance by the Department of Labor clarified that environmental, social, and governance issues are indeed consistent with fiduciary duties. In Europe, the high-level expert group on sustainable finance recommended EU-wide guidance to clarify that fiduciary duty requires consideration of environmental, social, and governance factors. Outdated conceptions of fiduciary duty cannot be allowed to stand in the way of progress toward a better economic system. At stake is a low-carbon, prosperous, equitable, and healthy planet in which human civilization can flourish.
okay. I want to introduce Julie Skye. She's a longtime friend, I guess. What's it been, about 10 years?
Yeah.
And we met at the Pickett Elliott House, in which is the former UUA. Oh, it must be the okay. That shouldn't happen more than once. I got rid of it. Yeah, we met there, and you're on the social responsibility or social responsible investing committee, or is that what it's called? Or
It is.
It is, and you're on it again, right? No.
Yes. In fact, you know, Terry and Mark and I met at GA, and then it turned out that we showed up in the Elliott Pickett House. And so, Vanessa, how long has it been since we first met? Because Vanessa and I worked with Sydney Morris and Simon Villaness and a group of early fighters in this work. But Vanessa, it's been 15 years that we have known each other. And Vanessa
there
is,
you go.
Yeah, that's about right.
So Vanessa and I were both on the Committee for Socially Responsible Investing. And then I was moved to the investment committee. Jim Sherblum found out that I really knew more about investments than I did SRI back then. And so I served on the investment committee as we went through divesting on fossil fuels. And then I left the committee and then came back 2 years ago. And then Vanessa is our community investment expert. And she's heading up probably the most transformative work that we are ever going to do with the UUA. I get goose pimples when I think, Vanessa, about how your leadership can change what's going on. But so in fact, I would love, Terry, for you all to feature Vanessa and her work around community investing, impact investing. Vanessa, what are we calling community investment now? This got several new names, doesn't it?
Well, no, community investing is still called community investing. What we're looking at is shifting from the tradition of using community development financial institutions, which are really wonderful. And back when we started doing it, it was really innovative and new. But now that very wonderful strategy of helping underserved communities get access to capital is fairly well known and no longer really cutting edge. And in light of the need for, sort of essentially reparative and reparations like work, particularly for African and Native communities, we're really trying to focus now on how do we get money directly into the hands of Black and Native entrepreneurs and also into Black and Native money managers. So that's the difference. That's sort of the new strategy we're trying to, or I'm trying to take.
It should be there.
Trying it.
Oh, and Vanessa is leading us at a time where we used to have a 1% allocation to community
It
investing.
said it was going.
And when we had $100 million, 1% might have looked like a big number. Well, now that we're over $270 million in the common endowment, which is the UUA's money as well as our congregations, 1% might move a needle, but we recently moved that to a 5% allocation. So Vanessa has a huge job of putting our money in the places that really are going to be transformative. So you rock.
Can I take a second just to say that we have a request for proposals out, because that's the thing, we're volunteers and our staff is already a little sort of overburdened with the rest of the things that they need to do. And so we really do need outside help. And so there's a request for proposals on the uucef.org website. That deadline is the 17th, and we're looking for Black and Indigenous and people of color to help us and come in and do a training on what is racial justice investing, and then actually help us to manage that community investing portfolio. So please check that out. I'll put a link in the chat actually for that.
Oh, good. One of the reasons why I like to start with Al Gore is because not a single one of us ever forgets what would have happened had Al Gore won the election and how different our world would be. But we joke and say Al is a principal in an investment firm in England, in London, called Generations. And his partner is Blood. So we call him Blood and Gore. I know it's a little investment humor. You don't get many chances to laugh. But the UUA actually has a $2 million piece of Generations. And it highlights one of the reasons why having your money with a common endowment gets you access to private money, to impact money, because very few congregations could take and get access to Generations, which is completely focused on the environmental aspect of future. So I use Al because his firm manages money for the UUA, but he's also our own personal hero.
Okay, we have a question is about the fund. Where did the money come from, and where is it going? The question was stated 270 million earned from genocidal investments and investing in fossil fuel industries, military, et cetera, that are not aligned with our UU values and principles.
Well, the proceeds of the endowment are donations and estate gifts and funds that are accumulated over decades of our congregations. And it's the way that many of our congregations fund their operations, fund their future. Many of our congregations get an amount annually. And I can certainly understand the statement about capitalism, and I understand that, but what I would ask is during this hour for us to remember that we are in right relationship. We haven't crafted a covenant here, but this is a time for us to talk and become in relationship and learn more about what the UUA is doing, and to find out how you can be more involved, how your views are important. And when you know us individually, there's not a single one of us that doesn't share the views on capitalism and what it is and what it has done and what it will continue to do unless activists band together to solve this. So there's not a single one of us that's sitting in an ivory tower espousing tired old views of capitalism. So thank you for sharing your thoughts, but I hope this hour and the time we spend together that we can be in right relationship and that we can hear each other. And we have a lot of talk and dialogue to do to make the changes we want. And respect has got to be the core of how we treat each other.
Okay, Julia's asked that we put our location and our congregation in the chat and what you expect to get out of this hour.
And while you all are entering it, I will say that, like when we sold the 5 properties in Boston, the funds that did not go into the new location went into the endowment. Vanessa, I don't even know how many congregations we have, but we have small congregations who invest $50,000. We have multi-million-dollar endowments from churches who believe that they cannot accomplish fiduciary duty on their own, and that a committee of members of the congregation is not the best way to protect their endowment and to make the decisions and to go forward. So the fiduciary duty is a big thing. Knowing, and I know I go to All Souls Tulsa, our endowment committee rotates. The members of that committee are not qualified to manage $6 million. And when they roll off, somebody new comes on. So it's a real conundrum to get the kind of management you need to safeguard these assets, which are going to be the core of your church's future operating budget. So let's see, we've got Sarah, Ames, Iowa. Is that you?
That's
Harry?
me. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Harry and I are colleagues. We co-founded an investment firm called Sustainable Advisors Alliance. Harry, would you do a shout out to the group here? Because if they don't know you, they should.
Hi, everyone. It's great to meet you. I'm going to turn it right back to Julie.
Okay. And we have the UU Parish. They're frustrated UU not affiliated with the congregation right now. Sam, she, her, Palomar. And I will say, I'm sitting here in Tulsa on stolen lands of Muskogee Creek. And Tulsa has a huge history of where we operate and how our need for reparative justice here in Tulsa goes past Native, Indigenous, and it goes to our African American community. So that's
Are you ready to start on the slideshow?
sure, whenever you're
Okay.
ready.
Okay, well, let's see. Here it is. And all right, we're ready to go.
Okay. And I'll just say next, please, Harry, when I'm ready. So who
Okay.
doesn't who doesn't know this quote from President Joe Biden? That don't tell me what you value, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value. And this is something that we never forget, that if our budget and our values don't align, then we need to change the composition of our committees. Next. This next picture shows you, a year ago, I used to have brown hair. Today I have silver hair. So for those of you that have known me or met me at GA, this is kind of a shock to our system. Next. So I have a finance degree from the University of Tulsa and an MBA in organizational change, and I may be a spreadsheet junkie, but I will tell you, do not let numbers and spreadsheets, do not let the belief that investing in the market is nothing other than gambling. Do not let numbers prevent you from finding out the intersection of your values and your investments, because there's no spreadsheet that can capture our values. Next. If anyone, Terry, you could make this presentation available, because all the way through here, whenever you see a link that's underlined, that's going to take you directly to other resources. So if we broke this up into a couple of evenings, we could go to all these different resources. But if you want to know more about something and you can see that it's either blue or underlined, you can go to these resources. Next.
Okay.
So this is, if you just search for generations, look at the articles that are here, and look at the academic work that's happening. So Al Gore left politics, but he is making a bigger impact than ever. Next. So Al uses sustainable capitalism, which is the goal of generations. Driving it is urgency, the climate. They aim to limit warming. Remember what it used to be, the 2-degree scenario? Now it's 1.5 degree, because we've already passed the ability to have a 2-degree scenario. And fairness, an equitable society where we don't have these haves and have-nots. Next, please. So we're going to kind of set the context, because you probably have heard all of these. Green investing, impact investing, mission-related investing is another term that we're using for community investing that Vanessa has been using. Sustainable investing, values-based investing, socially responsible investing is the most common. I used to work for an investment firm who used values-based investing because they were afraid to confront the energy. I'm here in Tulsa, so can you imagine the clients we have at a large investment firm? And they didn't want to irritate or annoy or offend anybody who was with an oil or gas or coal company. So I think values-based investing, it sounds good on the surface, but it's just how people greenwash their way and tiptoe around. But ESG is what the academic and financial community calls it, for environmental, social, and governance. And there are firms that are focused on governance and corporate social responsibility. There are firms that focus on the social aspect in terms of gender identity, non-discrimination. In fact, a quick aside is the UUA has single-handedly changed the face of corporate America when it comes to gender identity, non-discrimination. We went company by company, Walmart, Home Depot, Verizon. The year I presented at Walmart the last time, asking for there to be a human rights policy within Walmart that protected anyone who was that had a gender identity issue. I presented the last one, and I'm sorry I don't get to go to the Walmart annual meetings anymore. But the UUA, we have 2 causes that we really focused on in the early years, and it was gender identity, non-discrimination, and Say on Pay, which was about how to change how much CEOs get paid. Okay, next. I digress. I have many stories. So when you look at ESG, and I guess, well, Harry, we have an ESG ethics. Okay. Sustainable resources, clean technology, climate change, low carbon. We have some clients that are only interested in environmental strategies. We have some clients that, whether it's common sense gun reform, repressive regimes, health safety, product safety, relations, diversity. Governance is huge, because if you think corporate America is going to change, it's only going to change when the board of directors changes. People like JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon is the chairman of the board and the CEO. Tell me how unbiased his board is when he calls the shots in the boardroom and in the operation. So board independence is huge. Majority ownership, financing, planning and reporting, and executive pay. So SRI in the old days was really kind of focused on ethics. It was around faith-based investing, adult entertainment, landmines, gambling, tobacco, alcohol. So if you go back to the 60s and 70s, that's kind of what SRI began, when the Methodist faith, who is probably one of the most deeply entrenched in their belief system, is the values in their investing. Okay, next. So we're going to kind of start here with the name of this presentation is how UUs are saving the world or changing the world, that we're saving and changing. So you can screen in or out, and if you click on screen in and screen out, it'll take you to the UUA, our Common Endowment website, and it'll give you an entire page of what screening in or screening out is. The same thing with shareholder activism and engagement and proxy voting. So all of these blue words that are underlined will take you to more meat. But the thing that I am most passionate about is the racial justice investing, putting money into the color, in the hands of Black, Indigenous people of color. That's the only way we're going to substantially change income inequality. Next. So UUJEC is with North Star Asset Management, and we have a group called Racial Justice Investing, and the composition of this group is just amazing. But she says that North Star, our CEO, constantly reminds us there are no perfect companies, and I would also say there are no perfect investments. If you believe a portfolio of financial investments is the gateway to meaningful and positive impact in life, then she's got some swampland. Investing money isn't sufficient. And this is one of the things that Tim Brennan, our former treasurer of the UUA, was so firmly committed to, was once you divest from somebody, and we own a handful of fossil fuel stocks, but we only hold them. We hold the minimum amount we need to take them and engage them. Because engagement is the way that you are at the table and that you can continue to be annoying and as big a burr under their saddle as possible. The UUJEC is transformative. And again, get this presentation and click on these links and spend an evening with a glass of wine or a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and start seeing the breadth of what we're talking about. Because the more informed you are about it is, the more weight you have when you use your words, when you show up with a wealth of knowledge. And it's a huge body of knowledge that none of us could know everything that we need to. Okay, next, please. Okay, so context. I mean, everybody here knows this, don't you? Well, 1966, the UUA, the UCC, in Tulsa, the United Church of Christ, they are hand in hand with us in terms of activists and having no apology for when we show up and how strong our voice is. So these are kind of the Methodists, the UCCs, and TIAA-CREF made the first real change in corporate behavior. This was Eastman Kodak. So back in 1966, they said, we're going to change how you hire people. And it was the first social responsible resolution that changed the company's public policies at a shareholder meeting. So 1966, you know what was going on in the 60s. So kind of put a pin in that and think about the money showing, the activists showing up in the boardroom began only in the 60s. And my side is, I was born in 1954 in Detroit. I came of age in Detroit during Motown and during the police violence. And much of my work outside of my day job is around police violence and how to reduce police violence and change policing. I'm on a number of community organizations around policing. Next, please. So build it in, make it last. It wasn't then until 1970 that we really began to impact corporate life. And the interfaith investment boycott was in South Africa. And the boycotting South Africa was very different than boycotting in fossil fuel. I worked with congregations in 2013 and 14 with Simon Villaness, who's got remarkable history with Chevron activism, because we could pressure people to stop selling to South Africa. We could pressure companies by saying, we're not going to buy from you. But what we couldn't do with fossil fuel is the stock was owned by anybody. And if somebody sold the stock, somebody else bought it. So we had to develop, Bill McGibbon, of course, said, divesting from fossil fuels is an organizing strategy. He didn't really expect it to.
From the Health Calls program on behalf of Tough Health Plan. Please call us back. Message deleted. Window messages.
Hey, Elizabeth, could you mute, please? Thank you. So Bill McGibbon made no bones about it with the activists that showed up and worked with him from the early years, that he was using fossil fuel divestment to go to colleges, go to universities, go to sovereigns, to different countries, but that people's outrage at fossil fuel was the organizing, was what pulled us together. And that's what gave us the mass to show up and have signs on under overpasses that talked about divesting. That's what let colleges say, we're gonna divest these from our holdings. So part of what, there's a multi-pronged strategy where each person has a place where they can use their strategy. And some people are more targeted, some are more angry, some have stronger voices, some may be violent, but each strategy fits together in this puzzle of social change. Okay, next, please. So ICCR, located on Riverside Drive in New York, is in the God Box. They've been a consistent presence with filing corporate resolutions. And if you go to iccr.com, you can see the resolutions that were filed last year in 2020 and 21, and you can see what we have. Thank you for ICCR, Sally. So you can see what's happening there. And since Sustainable Advisors Alliance is a new firm, we don't have a big, robust shareholder activism. In the next 2 years, I'm going to be in San Francisco at Charles Schwab's office because they're a custodian for many of my clients. And the contributions to political, their political contributions and their lobbying, if we don't follow the money, we are never going to stop and change their behavior. So, but the faith community, the academic community, the corporate finance, the more these come together on a common cause, that's what really helped disrupt South Africa. And the Unitarians, we are there in the beginning with the Methodists and the UCCs. Next, please. This is really subtle. In 1972, the year I graduated from high school, the social responsibility of investment of endowment funds was the business resolution. Do you think about how transformative the Unitarian faith has been? I mean, anybody who spends very much time in an organization can see the weak side. But the work that we have done, in many cases, is very far ahead of its time. We say we punch way ahead of our weight. Corporate social responsibility and UUA investments, urging the UUA, and I love it when our congregations bring actions of immediate witness or demands that we change what we're doing, because that's what it took to get the UUA to be on a 5-year plan on divesting from fossil fuel. Next, please. And again, all of these blue lines, you can follow more. So just like traveling across country, every investment fund has an investment policy statement. And it's integral, it's core to the success of any investment program. And it's part of the reason that a fiduciary position is so important, because crafting the investment policy statement takes all sorts of factors and combines them in a way that even when somebody leaves the committee or comes or joins a committee, it's more of an enduring document that doesn't change very often, or it shouldn't change very often. But in 2007, no. 2018, I mean, are some people working on the 8th principle? I have all these rubber bracelets. One is on pride, one's on make Tulsa a monarch, one's racism stinks about a local group. But now's the time for the 8th principle about dismantling white supremacy. So, you know, we do change our policies, we do change our decisions, but we recognize the intersectionality of environmental, social, and governance. And intersectionality, I mean, it's a multi-syllable word, but it is huge when you say how, with all of these issues and people and needs and pain intersecting, how do we, it's like a knot, how do we untie it and find a strategy to begin exerting pressure and making change one day at a time. But I won't say that. But sometimes we find after one of our investment committee, SRI committees, that we need to bring a consultant in because we need some work. And anybody that works on a committee with the UUA is required to take, and I always get the multicultural, anti-oppression, what's the other one? ARAIA. So the work that happens behind the scenes is really important, because people come to these committees from all sorts of walks of lives. And as you know, not every Unitarian shares the values of every other Unitarian. There are many that are conservative. There are many that are more Christian based. There are ones that are, I mean, I'm an agnostic, pagan, Wiccan, Buddhist. And so we all come from such a different background in our faith tradition. Finding what we can agree with and how we can affect change is not easy. But dismantling our white supremacy culture, to say that, to put it on paper, put it in a legal document, tell the members of your congregation, we want to dismantle white supremacy culture. It's a system of wealth and power and privilege. It advantages white people. It keeps people of color on the margins. It oppresses. It destroys lives. It kills people. It causes pain. It'll be the work of my lifetime. And I have 30 years left to really work in this field. So I hope that by the time I'm 67, 77, 87, by the time I'm 97, I hope I'm seeing more positive progress than I am right now. But again, when you get this document, all of these are hot links. So you can find more about how wide and broad this faith is and the work that we're doing is. So next, please, Terry. So the 2017 Statement of Conscience put it, the escalation of income and wealth inequity undergirds many injustices that our faith movement is committed to addressing: economic injustice, mass incarceration, migrant justice, climate change, sexual orientation and gender injustice, attacks on voting rights. So the issues of our time, we work those into our document. We are not a staid document that looks like something you would get in the Harvard Business School. It is dynamic and it is radical and it is transformative when you take people who believe it and work towards it. Next, please. There's a company called Your State. And again, you could Google Your State. In the investment industry, the hardest thing we do is find good information that tells us, when you own a mutual fund, what's in it. And if you're worried about climate change, one of my big causes is prison reform. So do you want to invest in prison stocks? Well, Do you know how many of our congregations, when they're managing their own money, have huge amounts of money in borders? There's about 70 companies that are a part of the prison complex, the borders, and the occupations. So people like BlackRock, they may say, they may have some social responsible investment in some of their funds, but I would tell you the money they have that goes towards occupations, borders, and prisons is a lot more than the funds they have that don't go into it. The investment industry is hugely culpable, hugely focused on making money. And our job is to stand up and fight them and to refuse to let them use us as pawns. So when you have a tool like this, and this tool, I mean, it's funny, every tool, some of the tools I'm going to show you are free. Oh, thank you, Sally. I want to, we need to look at that because Terry, you'll shave the chat so I can look at that. Okay, let's go to the next one, please. Okay, so these are, and again, when you get this presentation, or you can be clever, Sally, and put deforestationfreefunds.org, that Friends of the Earth, if you want to say, okay, which of the companies in my portfolio are contributing to tropical deforestation, you go to Friends of the Earth, you can put in the ticker symbol, which is a five-digit letter that ends with an X. And once you put that in there, it will tell you if there are stocks in that mutual fund that you should divest from. So Friends of the Earth, let's go to the next one, please. Bless you. Are you profiting from deforestation and climate change? Search your, and this is what it actually looks like. So when you click on this hot link, you put in the ticker symbol, and many of your investment statements will have the ticker symbol, and you put it in there and you will find out. It'll often give you a score of an A, B, C, D. It'll tell you how many companies you need to divest from. Bless you, whoever keeps sneezing. Okay, next, please. So Friends of the Earth is also, you can join Friends of Earth Actions. They're kind of interrelated organization. So this is an example of an organization that's really focused on environmental sustainability. Okay, next, please. And so this is the roadmap. Search the mutual fund by name, ticker, or fund manager. See how much money, how many of your funds are invested in palm oil industry, whether in palm oil producers, banks who finance them. It's really, really hard to go into a company's, I mean, banks don't want to release the companies they lend money to. Nobody wants to release what they consider proprietary information. So it's really hard, though, to find out which of these companies, which of these banks are financing these huge operations of palm oil. So you use this action tool, and then there's a link on there that you can say, you could, and I would tell you, most of you know that taking a form and filling it out might make you feel good, but whether it's going to have a lot of action or a lot of impact, I can't always say it will. Okay, next, please. Now this is what I like. The Quakers. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, you can count on the Quakers when it comes to human rights and violations in your investments. So investigate. I was at ICCR in 2018 when this tool was rolled out, and this is again free. You go to investigate.afsc.org and you put in your ticker symbol, and it will show you the companies. And please, Lucy, I see you writing and writing. Terry will give you the PowerPoint, and you can just go click all the way through here. And it's funny, you know, you and I might think it's fun to spend our evening clicking on hyperlinks and looking at this, but you will not be the same again. When you see that there's a free tool that you can use to get information, and then it's going to make you mad, but then it's going to make you glad that this information is out there. And I hope we can have mean, this should not be the first time we sit and talk about this, because if we don't arm ourselves with this information and come together, if we stay as silos who are mad on our individual issues and are fighting against each other, that's not using our energy wisely. I hope that this is not the first of conversations we have, maybe in webinars, but maybe private conversations. Maybe there'll be working groups that will develop from this. Next, please, Terry. So, yep, the Quakers. This is, I know it's probably hard for you to see, but once you put in, I mean, like TIA CREF Social Choice Equity Fund. There are 4 companies in prison industry, 18 companies in illegal occupations, and 6 companies in border. I mean, the militarization of the border, it's really pretty remarkable. Microsoft employees stood in that they were not going to contribute to the border and occupations that were going down in Texas. Many times the employees of a company stand up and say, we're not going to work on this. Yeah, I love the Quakers. Yep. But the only thing about the Quakers is they're awfully quiet and nice and well behaved. And maybe, well, I don't know. Are there some poorly behaved activists, Quakers? I don't know. Not always. Okay, next one, please, Terry. Call it blood money. Okay, this is going to sound bad, but I'm going to say it anyways. 3 years ago, the UUA, when we had our GA, guess who our services were? Aramark. I mean, our local jail, Aramark are the people that do the cups and all kinds of related items. So how do we, if you look at this, 3M, Aramark, BNP Paribas. This is pretty amazing. Core Civic, that's the #1 fund that's held in many index funds that are all about private prisons. There's 2 major private prison companies. So I don't think I'm exaggerating by saying it's blood money. And I am not going to invest in a mutual fund, and I use mostly mutual funds. I'm not going to invest. Yeah, look, it runs Elizabeth Detention Center here in New Jersey, making money on the misery of humans. If you have a for-profit business, do you think the people that are incarcerated are going to receive all of the rehabilitation, all of the quality of life that they deserve? Somebody who is in a prison does not deserve to be abused and to suffer the way they are. And if you're investing in prison stocks, I mean, that's low-hanging fruit. You can find those companies pretty quickly and get rid of mutual funds that have that. I know Aramark dominates the food industry. Yes. Some people, I mean, a flashpoint might not be the prison stocks. For me, it is. Human suffering, locking people up for the way we have, the war on drugs is blood money. You don't have to have your investments. All the work that we do as activists, and then we freaking invest our money in the companies causing the misery that we want to fight against. We can't be tools of these companies. There are investments, there are mutual funds that perform as well as unscreened funds. We don't have to live on blood money. It's cross purposes. We work every day in our committees, and then we go home and open a statement, and there we have it. It doesn't have to be that way. Next, please. I'm sorry, I get kind of passionate. I will tell you, this is much like my favorite movie, The Matrix. Once you know, I get goosebumps saying this. Research state violence, take action. Once you know how pervasive these companies are and how many index funds they're in, you can't go back. Thank you, Sam. You don't have something, we don't have to live in it. thank you for, I may be a spreadsheet junkie and I may have an MBA and a finance degree, but I've taken my passion and I'm using it for the clients that may not be as passionate, but want the same outcome. Okay, next. Oh, this is great. Gender equality. Who doesn't believe that more women in the boardroom, more women in positions of power, family leave, that who doesn't believe that the world would be a better place if we had a similar corporate composition of women and men that we do in the broad community? As You Sow. And As You Sow is very cool. It started as a nonprofit, and what they did is research on shareholder engagement. And from that, so this is very cool. Because if you believe that women should make dollar for dollar, then investing in companies that do not believe that and do not treat women that way, that's another thing. Cross off your list. How many times do you have to make money knowing women are oppressed and held back in the workforce? Next, please. So this is pretty cool. I know it's kind of small, kind of hard to see, but you put in the ticker symbol and it pulls up and gives you a score, and it shows you mutual funds that have that score in there. Now you may have a mutual fund that scores high on gender equality and low on environmental, or badly on prison. So the challenge you're going to have, and the challenge that Harry and I have with our clients every day, is how do we take our clients' values and build a portfolio that reflects their values, knowing that, as UUJEC said, there's no perfect investment. There is no way, even if you think I'm going to own an individual security, there is no expecting capitalism and money to be a solution. It's a blunt tool, but it's a tool. Once you get into it, you then are committed to how your values show up in the little envelope that gets delivered to your house every month, your investment statement. Next, please. So here's an example. As You Sow does more than gender equality. So I put in the Vanguard total stock market. Can you see the scores here? Fossil fuel grade, D. Deforestation grade, C. Gender equality, B. Civilian firearms, C. Prison industrial complex. It's because so many of real estate is a huge part of many index funds, and those are often where you have private prisons. Military weapons, D. Tobacco grade, D. Okay, so are you going to own the Vanguard total stock market after you've seen this? Or are you going to say, I wonder if there is an index fund that scores well on these? You don't have to buy this fund. There are index funds, there are ETFs that don't own these companies. Do these tools work for individual stocks too? Yes, some of them do. Give it a shot and see if you can put an individual ticker symbol in on that. But look at this. This is, Vanguard may have 2 or 3 socially conscious funds. Even TIA Craft may have 2 or 3 socially conscious funds. You have to really work at ferreting out these companies. Boo Vanguard. Thanks for this education. Okay. It is Halloween coming up. I have a Halloween pillow on my sofa, so I'm getting ready. And I have 4 bales of straw in my driveway now. So next, please. This is very cool, and I know it's going to be very hard to see, so you're going to need to get this presentation on your own. So if you say, well, if it says socially responsible, can I invest in that? Well, isn't that good enough? What is good enough? What is good enough? Everybody has to answer that for themselves. But if you start at the bottom, and this is parental influence, the votes on ESG issues by individual funds reflect the positions of the parent asset managers. So this shows Calvert. If I asked you all to raise your hand, how many people, Calvert was the first company that you heard about doing SRI. Everybody knows about CARE. This shows you that Calvert, the parent company, you all know you get those little proxy statements that ask you to vote for the board of directors, the auditor, and then all the pesky activists about the 2-degree scenario and gender identity, all those other issues that we can bring to it. This shows you that Calvert votes, how they vote for the companies in their funds. Parnassus, that's one of our common companies. I'm having a hard time. Oh, Impacts, which used to be Pax and now it's owned by Impacts. American Century. So look at the top. Calvert, Parnassus, Impacts. Those are really the only companies in this list where the parent company is showing up at annual meetings and voting the way you and I would want to vote on the UUA. Come down to TIA. Okay, TIA is halfway through. Okay, great. So TIA and Putnam and Century, is that good enough? You know, we have to ask yourself, is that good enough? Because maybe you own the best SRI ESG fund in the world and it's managed by Parnassus or by Putnam. But is Putnam doing everything they can? And why do you need to invest with a company that's not doing everything they can? If they are not voting, the top three, which are purple, you look down at BlackRock, Vanguard, Dimensional, DFA. DFA is huge in the investment advisory arena. And they have funds that are SRI, ESG. But if the company is not completely committed to shareholder engagement and voting, then all you have is greenwashing. All you have is a company who's using you to sell their products to and to make money from. And why are we letting ourselves be used by these people? I guess we can go on to the next one, Terry. Okay, here's just an example of some of the companies. Domini, I mean, who doesn't know Amy Domini? And of course, Calvert now, this is an old slate, is owned by Nuveen, isn't it, Harry? And so all these, what's happened now that it's cool to be ESG, SRI, it's the fastest growing part of the investment industry, all these companies have been gobbled up. And so now Calvert is just a profit, it's just a profit center for Nuveen. But Praxis, Zevin is pure gold, Walden, Azad, Appleseed, Boston Common, pure gold, Trillium. So these are examples of companies that we get this. I need a new slide. We got to cross Calvert off the list because now they're just a corporate tool. You know, Calvert is a corporate tool. So these last few slides are tools for congregations. I have an embarrassing number of presentations that are like this one. I present at Sierra Club, at Sustainable Tulsa. I have a terrific presentation on the SDGs, because what's happening with Sustainable Development Goals and the UN, there's a huge amount each community can do. And I'm going to be working with some people in Tulsa about corporations kind of picking and choosing and setting some goals and kind of empowering their employees. But so if you go to our UUA CEF, you'll see tools we can do, policy guidelines, screening guidelines, because we are not at a destination. You will spend the rest of your life doing this work. Okay, next please, Terry. And so this is what Vanessa was talking about, that we are not going to have the change we want if we keep putting white people in positions of power. We're going to keep getting what we want. We have to disrupt this system. We have to have Native, Indigenous, BIPOC. White people, we have to pry our hands off these dollar bills, and we have to share the power. And white people have to give it up. Honor Native land to everyone. Yes, yes. So if you go to our website and you just click around about investing, reports, social responsible investing, again, you could there's enough here to choke a horse. You can get a lot of information here. And that's really the end. The last part, I know we're probably out of time, but I have a case study called Nuns with Guns. So I put that at the end, and you can, one last quick story. So I'm on an airplane going to New York City to go to ICCR's annual meeting. And I opened my Barron's, which is a big newspaper that's folded in half. And the title was Nuns with Guns. I went, oh, I know some nuns who are fighting with guns. Who doesn't know that Sister Simone, GA, nuns on the bus, right? So I say, I know some nuns, and those nuns work with guns. And sure enough, the Coalition of Religious Investors, Sisters of Holy Names of Jesus and Mary, They want a proxy vote to require Smith & Wesson to detail its efforts to make safer guns and report gun-related violence. I didn't know about nuns with guns. Yes, Am. Terry, how can you get this? Because this is a PD. I don't know how to share that, but Terry will make sure that anybody gets it.
If you'll put your email address in the chat, I will send you the slideshow, so you
Okay.
can click on all the links.
Okay, so here, let me. So I will be happy to send, and I'm not looking for business. I don't want to manage your money. I'm representing the UUA, and I will get you as much unabridged, brutal, vocal, true information that that we have. I want to go to one more slide.
Okay, pass the sisters.
Yes.
Okay.
Because who remembers when Dix said, we're going to stop selling high magazine guns, right? We're going to take them off our shelves. The nuns were the ones that made that happen. The BlackRock and Vanguard, which own together 20% of American Outdoor, won't comment on how they voted, but the vote had a majority, so we assume. Vanguard and BlackRock, they don't always tell us what they're doing. Let's see, what's the next one, Carrie? Do I have any final jewels here? I love this. Efforts proved ineffective, so activists enter stage left. So religious groups prove they can activists invest with the best. Stocks are unexpectedly being enlisted as instruments of morality. So companies know that they need to consider them and how they address corporate value, regardless of whether they espouse the values. Shareholder advocacy is one vehicle for social change. If you can influence corporate practices, you can have a ripple effect. And there's one more page, and what does it say, Terry? I think that's, it's not just nuns and it's not just guns. So shareholder engagement and activism, it is here to stay. And Donald Trump tried to defang and cut our legs out from underneath us, but Donald Trump's not here anymore now, is he? So, okay, that's really all I have, and I'll open it for questions and comments. Or Terry, I don't know how much time we have left. Have I taken too much time?
No, I think you thoroughly explained what you needed to explain. We can go as late as 9:30. Yeah, that 9:30 Eastern time, not Central time.
So
should I stop the sharing? I think I probably should.
yeah,
There
you can
is-
do that, because we can ask. Okay, so the members here are Vanessa and I are members of the Social Responsible Investment Committee. So I will tell you, there's an interesting people in the investment industry tend to be conservative and focused on fiduciary duty, and I call it fiduciary duty. The UUA owns the endowment. You know, GA every year, when you go to GA is running the UUA. The money that is there is owned by the endowment. So that's one of the reasons why we have the approach of actions of immediate witness and responsive resolutions, is because our members, I'm a member of a congregation, we matter. So, so there is an interesting, Vanessa, is there anything you could contribute to the interesting conversations that happen between classic investment people and our ilk, which are we're kind of the street fighters, aren't we, Vanessa?
Yeah, so I don't even think of myself really as an investment person. I really come from the community development finance world. So I've learned a lot by being involved with the two committees. I'm not sure if you understand that the investment committee is one committee and the socially responsible investing committee is a separate committee. I think we're getting to a shared value of not having those separate, because I think that's part of the challenge. is to not have this sort of SRI piece totally integrated.
Because we don't have a vote, do we, Vanessa? We don't vote on investment committee issues.
Not on the larger portfolio, right?
Yes.
On the community investing when it fits our general guidelines that we've set up in our individual policy. So that's definitely one of the challenges. So again, we're a group of, both committees are a group of volunteers, and we're continuing to try to learn, and that's why I'm really excited about this request for proposals. So please share it. We want some good folks to really help us move in the direction that it's going to make the change that we want. And it's not easy, this has been, it's interesting that we've had this awakening, particularly since the murder of George Floyd and the other murders that happened that year, and or I guess were public as opposed to the ones that weren't. But I've been saying I think African Americans have this 15 minutes of attention, right? And it's going to pass. And so you've seen a lot of corporate dollars get thrown at the problem, and a lot of statements being made that this is going to pass. So I'm really trying to help the UUA to really take advantage of these 15 minutes so that we can actually make some pretty significant changes in how we move forward. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Julie, who
Well-
makes the decision on where the retirement fund for the ministers and the staff?
That's a totally different group. And when I finally finish my term here, in fact, we've got a lot more money in the ministers. When I was appointed this time, I was interviewed for the ministers program as well as this. And I would love to develop training programs and materials like this, but it's a completely different group. But I would tell you, if you want to send a Christmas card and a love note to somebody, Lucia Santini, who is the UUA's financial advisor, and she works for Boston Trust. And Lucia, about 2 years ago, felt that, because I see Sam, I love you, Sam, said that, the SRI committee should be the conscience of our money, but we don't have any real stake. Well, Lucia felt like the two committees should act as one. And back 5 or 6 years ago, we could show up at each other's meetings, but we were, we didn't have any real total control over that. The SRI committee, we would show up. But we're not especially shy. And Vanessa, now that she's getting her, she's been on for 2 years now, and she has her strategy. She has her voice, and so we pick our spots, and we're aware of how to make an impact. But Lucia believes that this should be one committee, and that what, Vanessa? I should have said that. I should have said that.
Not at all. I was just trying to get in the queue, but go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say, this is an opportunity to really invite folks to consider joining these committees. The UUA, it has a sort of process. It has a committee on committees. What a name, right?
Appointments committee too, right?
Appointments committee. So, if you are interested in any of these, please apply, because we actually need to start building a bench. We've lost a couple of people. We lost the person who was head of the investment committee, and we lost a member just because
Rhonda Brunstick.
Somebody from the Socially Responsible Investing Committee. So it can be hard to get these positions filled. So please come join us, help us solve these problems.
And Vanessa, can anybody attend our quarterly investment meetings, our all-day meetings? Can they walk? I mean, are our committees open? Can somebody sit there and watch, or are those closed meetings? I don't even know.
I'm not sure about that either. I don't know that we've had other people participate in those, even when I was on the committee 15 years ago. But the thing that is open to everyone is our quarterly calls about the Unitarian Universalist Common Endowment Fund. And I encourage everybody to sign up for those, because those have been absolutely wonderful. And Julie and I have been talking about how they can be more educational rather than just sort of spouting the facts about what the portfolio has returned. Because I think a lot of people are now much more interested in being impactful, even our own portfolio. So we would love to really talk more about that and sort of the limitations on a portfolio of our size that, again, volunteers can't manage a portfolio like that. So we are sort of stuck in some of the old world ways of how those things are managed. And so helping you all to understand that and then help us move into different strategies would be really helpful. That's why we need more people engaged and understanding the challenges of socially responsible investing even in today's society.
And I'm committed to, we had a meeting last week that was pretty brutal. And meetings need to be brutal and they need to be real. They need to be, what I want to do is help the members of our congregations get enough knowledge that they really have power to make change. And if the knowledge is not evenly distributed, you're not going to be as effective as you want to be. And so I'm committed to whatever it takes to make each and every Unitarian know the ropes, know the story, know what's happening, know what's a good question, know what, I mean, of everything, being in right relationships. Somehow we have to have this melee where we fight it out in the street, but stay respectful and stay in and think that, we all need a covenant, assume the best of somebody. I mean, do your homework, be informed. So just know that I'm tough. I've been beat up by the worst old white men and the white women in the investment industry has to offer. I've been fired 4 times for my activism. Live in Tulsa and take a proxy resolution for Trillium over to One Oak and just see how well that turns out. That was not that full page ad in the finance section. That was not, when I saw that, I went, holy shit, can I say that? That was hard. Go ahead, Vanessa, am I going to get a demerit?
Not at all, not at all. I actually want to do a little sort of advertisement for a book that a local woman here in Philadelphia has written. It's called When to Talk and When to Fight. And I think it's called The Strategic Choice Between Dialogue and Resistance by Rebecca Subar. I'll just read you sort of the basics. When to Fight is a new way of talking about how we change the world. Woven into stories of big political change and profound personal transformation, Rebecca Subar introduces a new language to enable negotiators and activists to argue and collaborate. Subar's humor and Rossi Greenberg's graphics joyfully animates this model. So I'm very excited about this. I know Rebecca Subar. I think this is, I'm not sure if there are other books out there like this, but with all the things that we need to change now, I think this is a great tool. So I've actually just got off a Zoom with my church, which is the Unitarian Society of Germantown, saying we're going to have it as a book reading group.
Wow. We need to have it at the UUA bookstore, don't we?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And maybe we could, maybe we do a book group with larger members of congregations. Maybe you take what you're doing, Vanessa, and we can have other congregations work on this book together. Because you guys, if we're fighting with each other, we're not fighting with the right people. We have to know that each one of us has a tool and a strategy that's valuable. And some people are going to be bolder and madder and meaner and more hurt. The trauma that is experienced. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about the trauma we all carry for all the different ways. I'm a third wave feminist. When I got out of high school, I couldn't have a credit card. So what we've experienced in our lifetime, we all have enough pain to go around, but we need to put our arms together and know that, and decolonizing wealth. Vanessa, tell how you did that in GA last year. That's another great one.
Another great one. I hope everybody's heard about this one. But Edgar Villanueva has written a book called Decolonizing Wealth. He is a Native American man who worked in the foundation industry for about 20, 25 years. And he wrote this book, I guess maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. And, it's a love story to his industry, actually. I interviewed him for my radio show and it was really great.
Yeah, Vanessa has a radio show. You need to let people know about your radio show.
There you go.
Put that in the chat.
So, in the book, what he outlines is 7 steps for essentially decolonizing wealth. And, essentially it starts with sort of first acknowledging that the amazing wealth that this country has built up was built on the backs of stolen people, stolen land, stolen labor. And if we can recognize that, then we can follow the other steps to, sort of make amends and move the money and put the money into the hands of the people who have never been acknowledged. That wealth creation that our communities contributed to was never acknowledged or repaid. So now's the time to really start doing that on a large scale. So I highly, highly recommend that book.
So I think it sounds like and maybe because at our last meeting, Susan Frederick Gray was there and we talked about, there were some hard words, and Sam, I love you. Don't stop showing up. We need your passion. Keep showing up. Be there. Everybody show up with your voice. But this needs to come from the top and the board, that our congregations need to frickin' have education. We need to know the score. You can't go into a gunfight with a knife. We have to know the information. We have to show up armed. We have to devise a strategy where each one of us has a strategy according to our own personality and our knowledge. But together we all form an army that can be a part of this. It took 100 years for women to get the vote. It's going to take less for this to happen, Vanessa, because the allies, the white people, the people of color, the young people, there are enough people who are pissed and mad and are showing up. And that's why the battle's so hard. The old entrenched power structures know their time on earth is short. But I want it to be a goddamn shorter than it is if we don't show up.
Sally's had her hand up for a
Okay,
while.
Sally, where are you, Sally?
Can
Let's see,
you?
where are you?
I saw a question on fiduciary duty, which basically is, you could probably define that better than I can, but I also had a question about the various environmental actions that are happening next month, the Black Rock Week and the Build Back Better or Build Back Fossil Free Week, and whether the UUA is involved in those at all. Black
I
Rock's
don't know.
for the financial aspect of it.
Harry, do you know about this?
I don't know anything about it.
Harry, you know about it?
All right, I'll be sending out info, guys.
All right.
Okay, let's get that.
But could you
Because-
speak briefly about fiduciary duty?
Fiduciary duty in a non-jargony way, fiduciary duty is what you would do if you know what I know. So fiduciary duty means at all times you protect the best interest of the person that's sitting in front of you, and that the fiduciary never puts themselves in front, never profits at the expense, but that it's what you would do for yourself if you had my knowledge. And registered investment advisors like my firm, our firm, Harry's and my firm, we are fiduciaries all day, every day. And we're fee only. We have no compensation other than what clients decide they want to engage us to solve.
Yeah, well, that was something that Barack Obama got passed, was to require that all financial firms had a fiduciary relationship, meaning they were taking care of the clients, and Trump repealed that, if I remember
Yep,
right.
It got kicked back out. Yep.
I didn't
Yeah.
even think that passed. One question also on the shareholder activism, didn't that recently, they increased the minimum of shares you need in order to present a resolution?
You know, they were going to do that and it may have been rolled back. A lot happened in there. So Vanessa, do you know, it used to be if you own 2,000 shares,
Yeah.
$2,000
worth.
you could have a resolution, and it was going to be increased to a percentage of outstanding stock. But Harry, that didn't stand, did it? That got rolled back.
Some of us
Right.
just,
I think it did.
Yeah, some of us just had a thing, they're gonna buy more Apple stock because it went up, so. Bummer.
Yeah, Sam has asked about the fiduciary. Is that like,
It's FEAU. That's what I call it, the faux fiduciary. So if you work
Oh,
for
okay.
if you work for a brokerage firm and you receive a commission and you benefit from a transaction, you are not a fiduciary. So if your financial advisor gets a commission, even if the person is a broker and works for a brokerage firm, and then that you are on the fee only contract with them, you can't represent both people. And that's another thing about a fiduciary duty. You can't represent both sides. Like a realtor, you have a buy sell and a sell side. You can't represent the same person. If you're selling a house, the same realtor can't represent the person who's buying the house. So
Yeah, my father actually had a broker who worked for Merrill Lynch and quit because the pressure to sell the commission-based things was so great. He felt the responsibility, he was just retired out. Yeah.
and fortunately, most people don't realize that a stockbroker at Merrill Lynch, yeah, gets like 35% of the commissions and fee income they earn. And they have these quotas and requirements to turn the merchandise. And for brokers that don't generate enough income, their payout gets cut. And then once they're down to 25% of what you are paying, and if you don't have enough merchandise that's turned and not profitable, you can't believe the programs I've seen that gauge the profitability of every client, all the transactions. Then people like your father's friend are terminated and their clients are divided up among somebody else. And that's why financial advisors Harry and I have a goal of disrupting the investment advisory industry, because investment advisors need to be able to do what's right for their client. And if you're getting paid a commission, you can't do that. And if you're going to not be able to pay your house payment because you didn't sell enough of a proprietary product, but then that's a problem for you as a client. You need to know what this person on the other side of the table is making and earning.
okay, do we have any more questions?
So faux fiduciary, that's FEAU. Isn't that what, like faux paint? When you have like a faux finish, like a fake. Then mine is, I just made that up too, by the way, faux fiduciary. So I'm gonna start working on a series of podcasts. I have one podcast and I'm working on my other one, which is about the investment industry being rancid and rotten. And I could do that now because I can't fire myself. Or I probably would not. Where the profits, the client is the central ethic. The spirituality comes into play over whether when you know what you own, how do you feel about that? And I may be spiritual, but not religious. I'm a religious, naturalist, humanist. So I like the ritual of our faith tradition. I'm very, very committed Unitarian, but my ethics and my spiritual compass is different from somebody else. We all have to answer the question of what do we want in our portfolio. And now that there are index funds and ETFs that have the lower expense ratios, it takes a lot more money and a lot more time to do the work that we're talking about in terms of shareholder engagement and screening, and it takes more time and money.
So I've just put a link to the 2020 General Assembly workshop. It was called Money as Medicine, where the topic was stewardship. And so what they used was Decolonizing Wealth, the book, and the 7 steps to talk about stewardship. And I participated in the last about 15 minutes talking about what we're doing in community investments. So that would be a good thing to check out if you're interested.
That look for a lot more from our committee. That Vanessa and I have a lot of work to do, and we're not scared, and we're going to continue to push. We're going to give information to our members, because without you guys and GA and the work of what you're asking, I mean, divesting from fossil fuels We spent a year working with congregations on that, Simon and I did. But it came out with 99%, probably 99.9% of GA voted for, but we were involved with the final resolution. We helped the members understand what was doable, what was reasonable, what could be executed. It doesn't make any sense to pass a resolution that nobody can actualize and operationalize. So what needs to happen is we need to help our members know what's a step that's reasonable that we can get accomplished. And once we get there, then we can go to the next step. But you don't go from 1 to 10 overnight. And our congregation, I mean, our church, our faith tradition is well past the 1, is well past the 4 and a 5. When you put dismantling white supremacy in your policies and procedures and your investment policy statement, we are serious about this work. We are not kidding. Please know that. So I guess that's the last thing I can sign, right? Is we're not freaking kidding here, are we, Harry? Are we, Vanessa?
Okay, I'm gonna do the closing screen.
Are we
I
gonna have
think.
like a chalice? We didn't light a chalice, did we?
Nope, we didn't. Okay, this is how to find us. People can do that at home. I think that's about everything. I want to thank you, Julie. You've got a lot of enthusiasm. I want to look at what we own and see what's going on. I keep saying I don't want any of the Bitcoin or any of that kind of investments because I think it's all fake. But we don't own them specifically, but we own companies that supply the Bitcoin. What is that? What's the generic term for Bitcoin?
Cyber currency. I
Yeah,
will tell you, Sam, we are going to make our report we get from NEPC more informative and easier for our members to read. So when you get our quarterly report, it's not just 100, I mean, it's like 136 freaking pages, but we're going to make sure there's sections of it that no matter what your financial background, it's real words that you understand. I am committed to making sure that what the information we give you helps build your knowledge base because Sam, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power and we can work together. Accessibility is the new human right. So put your arm in our arm and Vanessa and I are there for you. Knowledge is power. We have to beat them at their own game.
great. Thank you so much.